In the furthest reaches of the Andromeda Galaxy, where ancient dragons once ruled the stars and humans were nothing more than whispered legends, a dying world holds its breath. The great dragon Queen Pyraxis lies in eternal slumber, her life force the only thing preventing her planet from crumbling into cosmic dust. Her daughter, barely past her first century, watches helplessly as their civilization dies around them. Then, from the void of space, comes something impossible, a human ship, battered and alone, carrying a soldier who should not exist in this corner of the universe. The young dragon has heard the old stories, the forbidden tales of the species that could perform miracles when all hope was lost. But those were just myths, weren't they? As enemy fleets gather to claim the dragon homeworld's ancient treasures, and time runs out for her sleeping mother, the young dragon must make an impossible choice: trust in legends, or watch everything she loves turn to ash. Sometimes the greatest strength comes from the most unexpected places. Sometimes salvation has calloused hands and carries scars from battles fought light years away. Sometimes a mother's love is strong enough to bridge the gap between species, between hope and despair. This is the story of that choice. This is humanity, fuck yeah. The escape pod screamed through Dracaris Prime's atmosphere like a falling star, its heat shield glowing cherry red against the perpetual twilight sky. Kira pressed her scaled snout against the crystal viewing dome of her family's orbital platform, watching the human vessel plummet toward the southern continent's crash site. Her golden eyes tracked its trajectory with mathematical precision, a skill inherited from generations of dragon navigators who had once mapped the star routes between worlds. Another salvage runner, her uncle Thane, rumbled from behind her, his massive bronze-scaled form casting shadows across the observation deck. Probably came to strip what they can from the ruins before the Vex Consortium arrives. Kira's claws scraped against the crystal. The Vex Consortium. Even thinking their name made her throat burn with frustrated fire. The reptilian merchants had been circling Dracaris Prime for months now, waiting like carrion feeders for her mother to die. When Queen Pyraxis finally drew her last breath, they would descend upon the dragon homeworld and claim every artifact, every scrap of technology that had made their civilization great. "We should investigate," Kira said, her voice carrying the harmonic undertones that marked her as royal blood. At 137 years old, she was barely an adolescent by dragon standards, but desperation had aged her beyond her years. Thane's laugh was bitter smoke. "Child, your mother lies dying in the heart chamber, our planetary defense grid runs on fumes, and our treasury couldn't buy a decent meal in the outer systems. We have no time for scavenger hunts." But Kira was already moving, her forelegs carrying her toward the platform's launch bay with fluid grace. Unlike the massive elder dragons who required starships to travel between worlds, younger dragons could still fly through vacuum for short distances. Their ancestors had once soared between planets like ancient Earth whales swimming through cosmic oceans. "Kira, stop." Thane's voice carried the harmonic of command, but she was past caring about protocol. "I'm going," she said simply, her iridescent scales shifting from blue to determined gold. "If they're salvage runners, maybe we can trade with them. Medical supplies, food, anything. And if they're scouts for the consortium?" Kira's head swiveled toward her uncle, and, for a moment, her resemblance to Queen Pyraxis was striking. The same proud carriage, the same fierce intelligence burning in those ancient eyes. "Then, I'll burn this ship to slag and feed their ashes to the void." She launched herself into space before Thane could respond, her wings catching the solar wind as she descended toward Dracaris Prime's surface. The planet spread out beneath her like a wounded jewel, its continents scarred by centuries of strip mining and ecological collapse. Once, this world had been paradise. The old stories spoke of forests that stretched from pole to pole, of oceans teeming with life, of cities carved from living crystal that sang in harmony with the planet's magnetic field. Now those crystal cities lay in ruins, their songs silenced. The forests had withered when the planet's core began to cool, and the oceans had long since boiled away into space. Only her mother's life force, channeled through the ancient heart chamber, kept the world's magnetic field stable enough to maintain a thin atmosphere. Kira followed the smoke trail to a crater in what had once been the Whispering Woods. The escape pod lay crumpled against a massive boulder, its hull blackened and torn. Emergency lights blinked weakly through the wreckage like dying fireflies. She approached cautiously, her sensitive nostrils analyzing the air. The scents were alien but not unpleasant: recycled atmosphere, synthetic materials, and something else. Something warm and alive and utterly foreign to her experience. The pod's emergency airlock had deployed automatically, creating a small breathable zone around the crash site. Kira shifted to her humanoid form, a painful process that compressed her 15-meter length into a shape barely 2 meters tall. Her scales receded into pale skin, her wings folding into her spine, her proud horns shrinking to small bumps on her forehead. The transformation always made her feel naked and vulnerable, but it would allow her to enter the pod's cramped interior. She found the occupant unconscious in the pilot's chair, secured by emergency restraints that had kept him from being pulped on impact. Kira stared in fascination. She had never seen a human before, though she had heard descriptions in her mother's bedtime stories. Bipedal, nearly hairless, with impossibly delicate features and skin like new leather. This one was male, she thought, though it was difficult to tell without the pronounced sexual dimorphism of her own species. His uniform was military, she realized. The cut was practical rather than ceremonial, and she could see the telltale signs of magnetic weapon attachments on his vest. Burn marks on his sleeve suggested recent combat. More intriguingly, his rank insignia were unfamiliar. Not consortium, not corporate, not even freelancer guild. The human stirred as she approached, his eyes fluttering open. They were blue, she noted with surprise. Like the oceans in her mother's oldest memories. Easy, Kira said, raising her hands in what she hoped was a peaceful gesture. You've been in an accident. Your ship crashed. The human's gaze focused on her with alarming speed, his pupils dilating as he took in her appearance. Definitely military training. Even injured and disoriented, he was cataloging potential threats. Where am I? His voice was rougher than she had expected, carrying traces of pain and exhaustion. Dracarys Prime. Third planet of the Pyraxis system. Kira kept her tone neutral. I'm Kira. You're lucky to be alive. The human tried to sit up, then winced as damaged ribs protested. Marcus Chen, Terran Defense Corps. He paused, as if the words surprised him. Though I suppose that doesn't mean much out here. Terran Defense Corps. Kira's breath caught. She had heard whispers of Terra, the mythical human homeworld, in the ancient archives. According to legend, it had been destroyed in a war so terrible that the survivors scattered to the furthest reaches of space, carrying nothing but their determination to rebuild. How did you get here? She asked. This system is supposed to be quarantined. Marcus laughed bitterly. Quarantined by who? The consortium? They're the ones who killed my unit. His eyes hardened. We were escorting a medical relief convoy to the outer rim when their dreadnoughts hit us. I'm probably the only one who made it to a pod. Medical relief? Food, water, medical supplies. The usual stuff that keeps people from dying. Marcus winced as he adjusted his position. There's a plague running through the outer colonies. Some kind of synthetic virus that targets neurological systems. The consortium has been blocking relief efforts, saying it's too dangerous to approach infected worlds. Kira's hearts, both of them, began to beat faster. A synthetic virus targeting neurological systems. Her mother's symptoms had appeared almost 3 years ago: progressive paralysis, cognitive decline, eventual coma. The royal physicians had declared it a natural consequence of her advanced age and the strain of maintaining the planetary life support field. But what if they were wrong? This virus, Kira said carefully, what does it do to its victims? Marcus studied her face with disturbing intensity. Starts with tremors in the extremities. Then, progressive muscle weakness, memory loss, eventually complete neural shutdown. Why? The words hit her like a plasma bolt. Every symptom matched what they had observed in Queen Pyraxis. The tremors had begun during the consortium's last trade visit. The paralysis had followed within months. My mother, Kira whispered, her carefully maintained composure cracking. She's dying of those exact symptoms. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his blue eyes reflecting depths of pain and understanding that made her realize how young she must seem to him. "I'm sorry. How long has she been sick?" 3 years. Our physicians say it's natural aging, but dragons live for millennia. She should have centuries left. Kara's fists clenched as the implications sank in. The consortium has been pushing us to sign mining contracts. They want access to our lithium deposits and rare earth elements. And if your mother dies, who inherits authority to sign those contracts? I do. The words tasted like ash in her mouth. I'm her only heir. Marcus leaned back in his chair, understanding dawning in his expression. They poisoned her. The bastards actually poisoned the Dragon Queen to force a trade deal. Can you prove it? Maybe. If I can get to my ship's black box, there might be communication intercepts from the attack on our convoy. The consortium coordinates their operations through quantum burst transmissions, but sometimes we get lucky with signal intelligence. Kara felt something she hadn't experienced in months: hope. It was a small flame, barely more than a spark, but it was real. Your ship was destroyed? Escape pods jettisoned the black box automatically. It should be somewhere in orbit, broadcasting an emergency beacon. Marcus tried again to sit up, this time succeeding despite obvious pain. Problem is, I'd need a ship to retrieve it. And, even if we could prove the consortium's guilt, who's going to listen? They own half the Galactic Trade Federation. We'll listen, Kara said fiercely. And, we'll act. Marcus laughed, but not unkindly. No offense, but what can one young dragon and a washed-up soldier do against a megacorporation? Kara's form began to shift, her human disguise melting away as her natural shape reasserted itself. Scales flowed over her skin like liquid metal, her spine extended and curved as her tail reformed, and her wings unfurled to their full 15-meter span. When the transformation was complete, she towered over the human, her golden eyes burning with inner fire. I am Princess Kara, daughter of Queen Pyraxis, heir to the dragon throne and keeper of the ancient ways. Her voice carried harmonics that made the pod's hull vibrate. My people once commanded starfleets that could scorch planets to glass. We have forgotten much, but we have not forgotten how to fight. Marcus stared up at her, and, slowly, incredibly, he smiled. It was the first genuine expression she had seen from him. Well then, Your Highness, he said, climbing unsteadily to his feet. I guess we'd better go wake up your mother. The journey back to the orbital platform took longer than usual, with Kara forced to fly slowly to accommodate Marcus's injuries. She had fashioned a harness from emergency supplies in his pod, allowing him to ride safely behind her neck scales. The human showed remarkable composure for someone traveling through vacuum on the back of a mythical creature, though she suspected his military training included stranger experiences. Tell me about your mother, Marcus said through the comm system in his emergency suit. What was she like before she got sick? Kara banked toward the platform's landing bay, considering her answer. She was magnificent. Not just physically, though she was the largest dragon in 5 generations. She had a mind like a quantum computer and a heart like a sun. When the Galactic Trade Federation tried to impose import tariffs on our crystal exports, she negotiated a better deal by singing their negotiator into submission. Singing? Dragon song carries psychic harmonics. In the old days, we could use it to communicate across star systems, or to calm hostile species during first contact. Mother could weave emotions into her voice like colors into light. Kara's throat tightened. She hasn't sung since the sickness began. They landed in the bay to find Thane waiting, along with most of the platform's skeleton crew. Word of the humans' arrival had spread quickly through their small community. You brought it aboard? Thane's displeasure was evident in the sulphurous smoke rising from his nostrils. His name is Marcus, Kara said firmly, helping the human down from her back. And he may be able to help Mother. A human? Help the Dragon Queen? The bronze dragon's laughter was like grinding stone. Child, the fever has affected your judgment. Marcus stepped forward, wincing slightly but maintaining military bearing. With respect, sir, your niece may be right. I have reason to believe Queen Pyraxis was deliberately infected with a synthetic pathogen. The temperature in the landing bay dropped noticeably as every dragon present focused their attention on the small human. Kara could feel the weight of their combined regard, the pressure of ancient predatory instincts barely held in check. Marcus, to his credit, stood his ground. "Explain," Thane commanded. Marcus outlined his theory about the consortium's bioweapon, the correlation of symptoms, the suspicious timing of the Queen's illness. When he finished, the silence stretched until Kira thought the air itself might crystallize. "Even if this is true," Thane said finally, "what can be done?" "We have no proof, no means of contacting authorities, no resources to mount a legal challenge." "We don't need legal challenges," Marcus replied. "We need medical intervention. If the Queen was infected, there might still be time to synthesize an antidote. Our physicians have tried everything. Your physicians were treating natural aging, not synthetic pathogens. The approaches are completely different." Marcus's voice carried quiet confidence. "I'm not a doctor, but I've seen bioweapon attacks before. If we can identify the specific pathogen, we can fight it." Kira felt that spark of hope brighten. "What do you need?" "Blood samples from the Queen, medical records, access to your laboratory facilities if you have any." Marcus paused. "And that black box from my ship. If I'm right about consortium coordination, there might be technical specifications in their communications." Thane's massive head swung toward Kara. "The heart chamber is sealed. No outsider has entered there in over 1,000 years. "Then, it's time to break tradition," Kara said. "Mother wouldn't want tradition to be her grave marker." The bronze dragon stared at her for a long moment, perhaps seeing something in her expression that reminded him of her mother's legendary determination. Finally, he nodded. "Very well. But, if this human proves false, if he brings harm to our Queen, I will personally ensure his death is neither quick nor pleasant." Marcus met the dragon's gaze steadily. "Understood. But, if I'm right, and we can save her, what happens to the consortium?" Kara's form began to shift again, not to human shape but to something larger, more terrible. Her scales darkened to deep crimson, her eyes blazed like stars, and, when she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that had not been heard in living memory. "If they poisoned my mother, then, they have awakened something they thought was extinct." Fire began to gather in her throat, not the random flame of anger but the focused burn of weapons-grade plasma. "They will learn why humans are not the only species in this galaxy that refuses to go quietly into the dark." The heart chamber lay at the center of the orbital platform, protected by layer upon layer of crystalline barriers that had been grown rather than built. Each barrier had been crafted by generations of dragon artisans, their molecular structure tuned to respond only to royal bloodlines. As Kira approached the chamber's entrance, the crystals recognized her genetic signature and began to sing softly, their harmonies welcoming her home. Marcus followed behind her, his medical scanner active and recording everything. Thane had provided him with dragon-compatible equipment from their archives, devices that had once been used in the great age of interspecies cooperation. The scanner's readings were already troubling energy signatures that suggested massive bioelectric disruption, cellular damage patterns consistent with synthetic toxins. "She's in there?" Marcus asked, his voice hushed despite himself. "She's been sleeping there for 8 months, Kara replied, her claws working the complex crystalline lock. The heart chamber is connected to the planetary core through quantum field generators. Her life force literally powers the world's magnetic field. And, if she dies? The field collapses. Atmosphere bleeds into space. Everyone dies." Kara's voice was matter-of-fact, but Marcus could see the weight of responsibility in her shoulders. This young dragon wasn't just facing the loss of her mother, she was facing the extinction of her entire species. The final barrier dissolved, and they entered the heart chamber itself. Marcus had tried to prepare himself for the sight of the Dragon Queen, but nothing could have readied him for the reality. Queen Pyraxis lay in the center of a crystalline pool filled with some kind of luminescent fluid, her massive form barely fitting within the chamber's boundaries. She was easily 50 meters from nose to tail tip, her scales a deep gold that seemed to hold inner light. Even in her current state, she was the most magnificent creature Marcus had ever seen. But she was dying. The scanner's readings confirmed what his eyes could see: cellular breakdown, neural pathway collapse, systemic organ failure. Whatever had been done to her was thorough and professionally executed. Jesus, Marcus breathed, then caught himself. Sorry. I didn't mean. It's all right, Kara said softly, moving to her mother's side. She looks smaller than she used to. Marcus approached the crystalline pool, his scanner painting detailed readouts across his visor display. The biosignatures were unlike anything in his medical database, but the underlying pathology was familiar. Synthetic retrovirus, designer crafted to target specific genetic markers, probably introduced through food or water supply. I need tissue samples, he said. Scales, blood, saliva if possible. Kara nodded, producing a ceremonial knife from her belt. The blade was made from crystallized dragonfire, harder than diamond and capable of cutting through virtually anything. She scraped several scales from her mother's flank, then drew a small amount of blood from beneath one wing. The samples went into Marcus's portable analyzer, a military-grade unit designed for battlefield identification of biological weapons. As it worked, he found himself staring at the Queen's face. Even unconscious, even dying, she radiated a presence that made him understand why her people had followed her across the stars. Got it, he said as the analyzer beeped completion. Synthetic retrovirus, definitely artificial origin. Targeting genetic sequences specific to dragon physiology. Can you cure it? Marcus studied the readout, his medical training warring with harsh reality. Maybe. The virus is sophisticated, but it's not perfect. There are gaps in its attack pattern, cellular functions it can't compromise. If we can synthesize the right cocktail of antivirals and cellular repair agents. What do you need? A laboratory. Raw materials for chemical synthesis. And that black box from my ship. I'm betting the consortium's communications include technical specifications for this virus. Kira was already moving toward the chamber's exit. Our research facility was mothballed 3 years ago, but the equipment should still be functional. Can you work with dragon technology? I've worked with worse. Marcus took one last look at the Dragon Queen, committing her image to memory. If he failed here, this magnificent creature would die, and her world would follow her into darkness. But he had not survived the consortium's attack, crash-landed on an alien world, and discovered a cosmic conspiracy just to give up now. Somewhere in orbit, his ship's black box was broadcasting its lonely signal, carrying data that might save a civilization. Time to go get it. The flight to retrieve the black box was harrowing in ways Marcus hadn't anticipated. Riding on Kara's back through vacuum was one thing, riding while she engaged in aerial combat with consortium scout drones was something else entirely. How many? Kara asked through their comm link, banking hard to avoid a plasma burst. 3 more coming in from the asteroid field, Marcus replied, his scanner painting hostile signatures across his visor. They've been monitoring for the black box's beacon. Of course they have. Kara's voice carried harmonics of pure fury. They want to make sure no evidence survives. She folded her wings and dove toward the nearest drone, flames building in her throat. At the last possible moment, she unleashed a torrent of superheated plasma that turned the unmanned craft into expanding vapor. Dragon fire burns at about 4,000 degrees Celsius, she mentioned casually, pulling out of her dive. Useful for sterilization. Marcus found himself grinning despite their desperate situation. Remind me never to get on your bad side. The remaining drones tried to coordinate their attack, but they had been designed to fight starships, not biological entities that could maneuver like living fighters. Kara dispatched them with methodical efficiency, her movements flowing between grace and violence in a way that spoke of genetic memories reaching back millions of years. The black box hung in space exactly where it was supposed to be, its beacon painting them with friendly identification signals. Kara caught it in her claws with surprising gentleness, careful not to damage the sensitive recording equipment. Got it, she said. Let's go home and see what secrets the consortium has been keeping. But, as they turned toward Dracaris Prime, Marcus's scanner lit up with new contacts.
Big ones, accelerating in system from the jump point. We have company, he said grimly.
Kara's head swiveled to follow his gaze, and her intake of breath was sharp enough to carry over their comlink. 3 consortium dreadnoughts were dropping out of hyperspace, their massive forms bristling with weapons. They're early, she said. Or they've decided not to wait for your mother to die naturally.
Marcus checked his chronometer. Queen Pyraxis's vital signs had been declining steadily. How long does she have? Hours. Maybe less. The dreadnoughts were already launching fighter wings, clouds of small craft spreading out to surround the planet. This wasn't a trade negotiation or a diplomatic mission. This was an invasion. Can your people fight them? Kira's laugh was bitter music. With what?
We have 6 atmospheric fighters and delusions of past glory. She banked toward the orbital platform, her wings working harder now as urgency drove them forward. No, fighting won't work. We need a different approach.
Such as? We save my mother. And, then, we remind the consortium why dragons were once feared across the galaxy. Marcus hoped she was right.
Because in a few hours, they were either going to witness the resurrection of a legend, or the extinction of the last free dragon world in known space.
Either way, it was going to be a hell of a fight. The research laboratory hadn't been used in 3 years, but dragon technology was built to last millennia.
As Kara initialized the crystalline computational matrices, Marcus marveled at the elegant fusion of biological and mechanical systems. Everything in dragon society seemed to grow rather than being manufactured, as if their entire civilization had evolved from some primordial symbiosis between consciousness and crystal. Synthesis chambers online, Kara announced, her claws dancing across organic control surfaces that pulsed with inner light.
Genetic sequencer is calibrating. What do you need first?
Marcus plugged the black box into his field computer, watching as terabytes of intercepted communications flowed across his display. The consortium hadn't bothered with heavy encryption, they hadn't expected anyone to survive their attack on the medical convoy.
Here, he said, highlighting a technical document.
Viral specifications, complete with deployment methodology and expected timeline. His face hardened as he read.
They've been planning this for 2 years. The virus was specifically engineered to target Pyraxis bloodline genetics.
They tried to murder my entire family line. Kara's voice carried harmonics that made the laboratory equipment vibrate.
For a mining contract. It gets worse. Marcus scrolled through more documents. They've done this before. 17 different worlds over the past decade.
Always the same pattern: introduce synthetic pathogen targeting the ruling bloodline, wait for political instability, move in with humanitarian aid that's actually military occupation. Kira stopped working, her golden eyes reflecting depths of rage that Marcus was beginning to recognize as dangerous.
17 worlds? 17 that we know of. Could be more.
Marcus transferred the viral specifications to the laboratory's main computer.
But, we can stop them here. The virus has a critical weakness: it can't adapt to rapid changes in cellular chemistry.
If we flood your mother's system with the right combination of antivirals and cellular repair compounds,
she'll recover? Maybe.
Dragon physiology is outside my expertise, but the underlying principles should hold. Marcus paused, studying the complex molecular diagrams flowing across the display. Problem is, we need to synthesize about 50 different compounds, and the consortium fleet will be in orbital bombardment range in less than 4 hours. Kara's form began to shift, her humanoid shape flowing back into her natural dragon configuration.
Then, we'd better work fast. What followed was the most intense scientific collaboration Marcus had ever experienced.
Dragon biotechnology operated on principles that seemed almost magical to human understanding, directing cellular growth through harmonic resonance, synthesizing complex organic compounds using crystalline matrices that responded to specific musical frequencies. Kara moved through the laboratory like a conductor leading an orchestra, her voice weaving melodies that convinced molecules to dance into precisely the configurations they needed.
How does this work? Marcus asked, watching in fascination as a synthesis chamber grew antivirals like fruit on a tree.
Everything has its own song, Kara explained, adjusting the harmonic frequency of a crystalline catalyst.
Matter, energy, life itself, it's all vibration at the quantum level.
Dragons learned long ago to hear those songs and sing them back with variations.
Like genetic engineering through music? More like genetic engineering through prayer.
Kara's throat glowed as she hummed a complex melody that convinced a recalcitrant protein chain to fold properly.
We don't force matter to obey us. We ask it nicely.
Outside the laboratory, Marcus could see consortium fighters establishing orbital patrol patterns.
The invasion force was being methodical, professional.
They would secure the high ground first, eliminate any possibility of escape, then deliver their ultimatum.
Standard corporate warfare doctrine. We need more time, he muttered, watching the tactical display.
No, Kara said firmly.
We need to move faster. How many compounds do we still need? 12.
But some of these molecular structures are incredibly complex. Then, sing louder.
Kira's eyes blazed with inner fire. My mother is dying while we speak.
The consortium thinks they can murder their way to profit.
Time to prove them wrong. The next hour blurred past in a symphony of creation.
Marcus found himself humming along with Kara's songs, his human vocal cords somehow finding harmonies that resonated with the laboratory's crystalline systems. The equipment responded to their combined efforts with increasing enthusiasm, synthesis chambers blooming into productivity as antivirals, cellular repair agents, and immune system boosters took shape in biological crucibles.
Last one, Kara announced, her voice hoarse from hours of harmonic manipulation. Neural pathway reconstruction serum.
This one's tricky, it has to be precisely calibrated to my mother's brain chemistry.
Can you do it? I don't know. For the first time since they'd met, Kara sounded uncertain. I've never attempted something this complex. If I get the harmonic frequencies wrong, the serum could cause more damage than the virus. Marcus checked the tactical display.
Consortium ground forces were beginning their descent, armored dropships burning through the atmosphere like mechanical meteors.
How long do we have before they reach the platform? 30 minutes. Maybe less.
Marcus made a decision that would have horrified his military instructors. He began to sing. It wasn't much of a song. Humans had lost most of their harmonic abilities when they'd abandoned their original homeworld, but it carried something that pure dragon harmony lacked.
Hope. Determination.
The stubborn refusal to accept defeat that had carried his species across impossible odds to survive in a hostile galaxy. Kira's head swiveled toward him, surprise replacing despair in her golden eyes.
You can hear it? The song of matter?
I can hear your song, Marcus replied, his voice blending with hers as they coaxed the final serum into existence.
And I can sing along.
The synthesis chamber pulsed with combined human and dragon harmonics, its crystalline walls glowing like captured starlight.
Inside, the neural reconstruction serum took shape molecule by molecule, each component precisely calibrated to Queen Pyraxis's unique brain chemistry.
Got it, Kara breathed, carefully extracting the completed serum.
All 50 compounds, ready for administration. Then, let's go save your mother.
They reached the heart chamber as the first explosion echoed through the platform's structure. Consortium Marines had breached the outer hull, advancing through the corridors with military precision. Marcus could hear the distinctive whine of plasma rifles, the heavier percussion of crystalline barriers being destroyed.
They're not negotiating, he observed. They never were. Kara entered her biometric codes with steady claws, despite the chaos erupting around them. The consortium doesn't negotiate with anyone they can simply take from.
The heart chamber's crystalline barriers dissolved, revealing Queen Pyraxis exactly as they had left her.
But something had changed.
Her breathing was shallower, her golden scales dimmed almost to bronze.
The quantum field generators connecting her to the planetary core were flickering erratically.
She's failing, Kara whispered.
Marcus checked his chronometer.
They had perhaps minutes before the Queen's death triggered a cascading planetary collapse.
The compounds they had synthesized would need hours to take effect, time they simply didn't have.
There has to be something else, he said desperately.
Some way to buy time while the treatment works.
Kira stared at her dying mother, then, at the quantum field generators, then, at Marcus with sudden understanding.
There is. But, you're not going to like it. What? Dragon physiology allows us to share life force temporarily. If someone with compatible genetics connects to the same quantum field, you're talking about risking your life to keep her alive while the treatment works? I'm talking about both of us risking our lives. Kara's gaze was steady, determined. Human genetic markers are surprisingly compatible with dragon physiology, that's why the consortium's virus needed such specific targeting. If we both connect to the quantum field simultaneously, we might be able to stabilize her long enough for recovery. Marcus understood immediately. The quantum field generators weren't just connecting Queen Pyraxis to the planetary core, they were the interface through which Dragon royalty channeled their life force into maintaining the world's magnetic field. Connecting to them would mean sharing not just the Queen's medical crisis, but the enormous energy requirements of keeping an entire planet habitable. What are the odds? Honestly? About 30%. For all three of us. Kara was already moving toward the field generators, her scales shifting to match their harmonic frequency. But, it's the only chance we have. Marcus thought about his destroyed unit, about the medical convoy that had died trying to bring hope to plague-stricken worlds, about the 17 civilizations the consortium had murdered for profit. He thought about Queen Pyraxis lying magnificent and dying in her crystalline pool, about Kara facing the extinction of her species with courage that put most soldiers to shame. How do we do it? Kara began to sing, her voice weaving harmonies that made the quantum field generators respond with increasing resonance. Touch the central crystal and match your breathing to my mother's. The field will do the rest. Marcus placed his hand on the warm crystal surface and immediately felt the connection snap into place. Energy flowed through him like liquid lightning, the combined life force of three beings channeling into the massive effort of maintaining a planetary magnetic field. The sensation was indescribable. He could feel Queen Pyraxis' struggle against the virus, Kara's fierce determination, and something vast and planetary reaching up from the world's molten core. Now, Kara said, injecting the first antiviral compound directly into her mother's bloodstream. Hold the field steady while the treatment works. What followed was a battle fought on cellular and quantum levels simultaneously. The consortium's synthetic virus had been designed to be unbeatable, its artificial genetic sequences optimized for lethality and resistance to treatment. But it had never faced the combined determination of two species that refused to accept extinction. Marcus felt the virus fighting back as the antivirals took effect, its synthetic RNA sequences desperately trying to maintain their death grip on Queen Pyraxis' nervous system. Through the quantum field, he could sense Kara pouring her own life force into the struggle, her young dragon physiology straining to support both her mother's recovery and the planetary field's energy requirements. It's working, she gasped, administering the next compound in their carefully crafted sequence. I can feel her neurons beginning to regenerate. But the effort was taking its toll. Marcus could feel his human cardiovascular system pushing dangerously close to cardiac arrest, while Kara's scales were beginning to dim as she exhausted her energy reserves. Queen Pyraxis remained unconscious, her massive form still motionless in its crystalline pool. Another explosion rocked the platform, closer this time. The consortium marines had reached the chamber's outer defenses and were beginning their assault on the crystalline barriers. Marcus could hear Thane's voice roaring defiance somewhere in the corridor system, the bronze dragon making his final stand. How much longer, he managed to ask. Neural reconstruction serum goes in now, Kara replied, her voice barely audible. Then, we wait and hope. She injected the final compound, the one they had crafted with combined human and dragon harmonics. Marcus felt it flowing through the quantum field connection, its complex molecular structure seeking out damaged neural pathways and beginning the delicate work of restoration. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, Queen Pyraxis' breathing deepened slightly, her scales gaining the faintest hint of their former luster. More, Kara whispered. She needs more time.
Marcus poured everything he had into the quantum field, feeling his life force streaming into the connection between mother and daughter. He thought about his unit, about the soldiers who had died trying to protect medical convoys, about the stubborn human refusal to let good people die while bastards profited. "Come on," he said to the unconscious queen. "Your daughter needs you. Your world needs you. Time to wake up." Queen Pyraxis's eyes opened. They were golden like Kara's, but ancient beyond measure, filled with intelligence and power that made Marcus understand why her people had followed her across the stars. She looked at him first, her gaze taking in his presence in the quantum field with surprise and something that might have been approval. Then, she looked at her daughter. "Kira." Her voice was harmonics and starlight, power held in careful control. "What have you done?" "Saved you," Kira replied, tears streaming down her scaled cheeks. "Mother, the consortium poisoned you." "They've been planning this for years, I know." Queen Pyraxis began to rise from her crystalline pool, water cascading from her magnificent form as she stretched muscles that had been still for months. "I have been dreaming of their conversations, seeing their plans through the quantum field connection." Her gaze fixed on Marcus. "And I have been dreaming of him." "The human helped," Kira said quickly. "Marcus Chen of the Terran Defense Corps. He figured out the virus, synthesized the cure." Marcus Chen. The queen's voice made his name sound like music. "Who connected to the quantum field to share the burden of healing? Who risked his life for people not his own?" She extended one massive claw toward him, a gesture of unmistakable respect. "The old stories spoke truly of your kind." Marcus found himself bowing, though he wasn't sure why. "Your Majesty. Your daughter is remarkable. She never gave up hope. Neither did you." Queen Pyraxis stepped fully out of the pool, her presence filling the heart chamber with renewed power. The quantum field generators began to pulse with steady energy, their connection to the planetary core stabilizing for the first time in months. "And, now, I think, it is time to remind the consortium why they should have stayed away from Dracarys Prime." The crystalline barriers around the heart chamber exploded inward, and consortium marines poured through the breach. They were professionals, moving with practiced efficiency as they swept the chamber with plasma rifles. Their weapons' fire splashed harmlessly off Queen Pyraxis's scales. "Impossible," the squad leader breathed into his comm unit. Targets were reported unconscious. "Dragon Queen is mobile and responsive." "Then, kill her," came the reply from orbit. "All targets are expendable. Secure the quantum field generators and prepare for mining operations." Queen Pyraxis laughed, a sound like distant thunder that made the chamber's crystalline walls ring in harmony. "Mining operations? On Dracarys Prime?" She inhaled deeply, her throat beginning to glow with building fire. "I think not." The torrent of plasma that erupted from her jaws was unlike anything Marcus had ever seen. Not the relatively gentle flames Kira had used against the orbital drones, but something approaching the temperature of stellar cores. The consortium marines didn't even have time to scream before they were converted to component atoms. "Kira," the queen said calmly, as if she hadn't just committed casual genocide. "Take our human friend to the Orbital Defense Command Center. It's time to show the consortium what dragon technology can accomplish when we're not dying of synthetic plagues." "Mother, the defense grid has been offline for months." "The defense grid has been sleeping. Like its queen." Pyraxis's eyes blazed with inner fire as quantum energy flowed through her connection to the planetary core. "But we are both awake now. And we remember how to fight." Marcus felt power building in the platform's crystalline structure, ancient systems coming online after decades of dormancy. Through the quantum field connection, he could sense weapons arrays unfurling from hidden positions, targeting systems acquiring locks on the consortium fleet, defensive screens powering up to deflect incoming fire. "How is this possible?" he asked. "Your people said the defense grid was destroyed." "Not destroyed," Queen Pyraxis corrected, her harmonics carrying across multiple octaves simultaneously. "Hibernating. Waiting for the right moment to remind the galaxy that dragons are not extinct. Merely sleeping." The platform shuddered as the first orbital defense batteries opened fire. Through the chamber's viewing crystals, Marcus could see lances of coherent energy reaching into space, striking consortium dreadnoughts with power that made their shields flare and buckle.
"This is impossible," he breathed.
"No," said Kira, her own scales beginning to glow with reflected power from her mother's awakening.
"This is dragon technology. This is what we were before we got comfortable. Before we forgot that some things are worth fighting for." Queen Pyraxis spread her wings, each membrane crackling with quantum energy as she prepared to take flight. "Kira, Marcuschan of the Terran Defense Corps, will you fly with me? It has been too long since dragons rode to war." Marcus looked at the magnificent creature before him, at Kira's determined expression, at the consortium fleet beginning to panic in orbital space as weapons they'd thought extinct lashed out from a supposedly defenseless world. He thought about medical convoys dying in the void, about 17 murdered civilizations, about corporate profits measured in the blood of innocents. "Your Majesty," he said formally, "it would be my honor." Queen Pyraxis smiled, an expression of terrible beauty on her ancient features. "Then, let us show them what happens when you wake a sleeping dragon." The flight from the orbital platform to the first consortium dreadnought was unlike anything in Marcus's experience. Queen Pyraxis moved through space like a living weapon, her massive form accelerating beyond what should have been physically possible. Kira flew beside her, smaller but no less deadly, while Marcus rode in a crystalline harness that somehow maintained a breathable atmosphere even in hard vacuum. "How is this possible?" he asked through the comm system. "Dragons were spacefaring long before we developed technology," Kira explained, banking to avoid a spread of missile fire from the dreadnought's defensive arrays. "We evolved in the void between stars. Vacuum is our natural environment." "And the breathing apparatus?" "Crystalline symbiotes," Queen Pyraxis answered, her voice carrying easily across the quantum field connection they still shared. "They convert stellar radiation directly into oxygen." "Very efficient." The dreadnought was firing everything it had at them, filling local space with plasma bolts, missile swarms, and particle beam arrays. None of it was designed to engage targets as small and maneuverable as individual dragons. Most of the fire went wide, and what did connect was absorbed harmlessly by scales that had evolved to survive in stellar coronas. "Target the ship's quantum field generators," the Queen commanded. "Disable their FTL capability first. I want these particular humans to stay and face justice for their crimes." Kira peeled away from formation, diving toward the dreadnought's engine section with flames building in her throat. Her attack was surgically precise, her plasma bolts striking the specific components that powered the ship's faster-than-light drive. Secondary explosions rippled along the vessel's hull as quantum field generators overloaded and died. "One down," she reported, pulling up from her attack run. "Two to go." But the other consortium ships were adapting to the threat, coordinating their fire and launching fighter wings to engage the dragons at closer range. Marcus watched the tactical display with growing concern as hostile contacts surrounded their position. "We're outnumbered," he observed. "We're outmanned," Queen Pyraxis corrected. "But we are far from outnumbered." She opened her mouth and sang. The sound that emerged wasn't quite music and wasn't quite noise, but something that resonated across multiple dimensions simultaneously. Through the quantum field connection, Marcus felt its power building, reaching out across space to touch something vast and sleeping. Dragon eggs, hidden in asteroid fields and planetary rings throughout the system, began to crack open. Adult dragons in hibernation on distant moons stirred to wakefulness, their consciousness responding to their queen's call. Ships thought lost in deep space suddenly powered up their engines and changed course for Dracra's Prime. "You're not the last dragons," Marcus realized. "We are a patient people," the Queen replied, her song continuing to build in power and complexity. "When extinction threatened, we did not rage against it. We simply went to sleep and waited for better times. And now we wake up." The first of the returning dragons arrived within minutes, ancient creatures who had been sleeping in the system's outer reaches, their hibernation pods disguised as asteroids or cometary ice. They were massive, some even larger than Queen Pyraxis, and they were magnificently angry at being awakened by news of poison and betrayal. The consortium fleet found itself facing not 3 individuals,
but more than 40 full-grown dragons, each one a living weapon system with millions of years of evolutionary optimization for combat in space.
The battle was brief and decisive.
Marcus watched in fascination as the dragons employed tactics that seemed to come from genetic memory, complex three-dimensional maneuvers that confused the consortium ship's targeting systems, coordinated attacks that overwhelmed defensive screens through sheer concentrated firepower, and boarding actions that involved simply melting through hull plating to engage the crews directly.
"Surrender is not an option," Queen Pyraxis announced over the fleet's communication channels.
"You poisoned a planetary ruler for profit.
You murdered medical convoys bringing aid to plague victims.
You committed genocide against 17 civilizations to satisfy corporate quarterly reports." The lead consortium admiral tried to negotiate, offering mining concessions and trade agreements in exchange for safe passage.
Queen Pyraxis listened to his proposals with the patience of geological time, then delivered her verdict. No.
The final dreadnought died in a ball of dragon fire, its hull plates converted to plasma by concentrated breath weapons. Escape pods scattered from the wreckage, carrying surviving crew members who would face trial for crimes against entire species. "It's over," Kira said, her voice carrying exhaustion and relief in equal measure. "No," Queen Pyraxis replied, turning her ancient gaze toward the hyperspace jump point where more ships were already appearing.
"It's beginning. Word of this will spread throughout the galaxy. The consortium's other victims will learn that resistance is possible."
Marcus checked the identification signatures on the new arrivals and felt his heart skip.
"Those are Terran Defense Corps vessels. My people. Reinforcements? Better."
Marcus was grinning now, his exhaustion forgotten. "Medical ships. With doctors who specialize in synthetic pathogen treatment." He looked at the Queen, then at Kara, then at the dozen other dragon worlds whose defense grids were suddenly coming online throughout local space.
"Your Majesty, I think we're about to cure a lot more than just one case of consortium poisoning." Queen Pyraxis smiled, an expression of terrible and beautiful promise. "Marcus Chen of the Terran Defense Corps, I believe you are correct.
And I believe the consortium is about to learn what happens when humanity and dragonkind decide to work together." In the depths of space, more eggs began to crack open.
On distant worlds, sleeping dragons began to stir.
And, somewhere in a corporate boardroom light years away, consortium executives received reports that would give them nightmares for the rest of their considerably shortened lives.
The age of dragons was returning.
And, this time, they weren't coming alone. 3 weeks after the Battle of Dracarys Prime, the orbital platform had been transformed into something resembling a military command center crossed with a dragon nursery. Terran Defense Corps medical ships hung in space alongside newly hatched dragons learning to fly, while human doctors worked with dragon healers to synthesize treatments for synthetic pathogens that had been spreading like wildfire through the outer colonies. Marcus stood in the main briefing chamber, watching Queen Pyraxis review intelligence reports with Admiral Sarah Chen, no relation, despite the shared surname, commander of the TDC's 4th Medical Fleet. The contrast between them was striking, the Admiral, compact and efficient in her blue uniform, dwarfed by the magnificent dragon whose smallest claw could have crushed her effortlessly. 17 confirmed worlds under consortium bioweapon attack, Admiral Chen was saying, her voice carrying the exhaustion of someone who had seen too much death in recent months.
"But, your intelligence suggests the number could be as high as 43.
"The consortium has been methodical," Queen Pyraxis replied, her harmonics resonating through the chamber's crystalline walls. "They identify worlds with valuable resources and weak defenses, then introduce synthetic pathogens targeting the ruling species' specific genetic markers. When the leadership dies, they move in with humanitarian aid that's actually military occupation. Corporate genocide," Marcus said grimly.
"Profitable and deniable."
Kira approached their group, her scales still showing traces of the quantum energy burns she'd sustained during the battle.
"Mother, the Terran medical teams are requesting more dragon healers for the Proxima colony mission.
Their bioharmonics are proving essential for treating the neural pathway damage."
"How many?"
12. They want to attempt simultaneous treatment of the entire colonial leadership before the pathogen reaches terminal stages. Queen Pyraxis considered this, her ancient eyes reflecting depths of calculation that spoke of governing a star-spanning civilization.
Very well. But they go with escort. I won't have our healers vulnerable to consortium retaliation. Admiral Chen nodded approvingly. The TDC can provide security.
Our main concern is time. According to our intelligence, consortium forces are mobilizing for a major offensive. They can't allow this alliance to continue, or their entire corporate empire will face rebellion.
Let them come, Kara said fiercely.
We've awakened 37 dragons in this system alone, with more stirring throughout the sector.
They want a war? They can have one.
It's not that simple, Marcus interjected. The consortium controls shipping lanes, trade routes, communication networks.
They can strangle entire sectors economically without firing a shot. Unless those sectors have alternatives, Queen Pyraxis said thoughtfully. Tell me, Admiral Chen, how would your people feel about riding dragons between the stars? The human officer blinked in surprise. I'm sorry, Your Majesty?
Dragon ships, Kara explained, excitement building in her voice. Biological vessels grown rather than built, powered by quantum field manipulation rather than conventional drives. We could re-establish trade routes that bypass consortium control entirely. The techniques were lost centuries ago, Queen Pyraxis continued, but recent events have reminded me that many things we thought extinct were merely sleeping. Give me 6 months, and I can grow a fleet that will make consortium dreadnoughts look like toys. Marcus felt that familiar spark of hope, the same sensation that had driven him to trust a young dragon's desperate plan to save her dying mother. What would you need? Raw materials. Genetic templates from our archives. And human volunteers willing to form symbiotic relationships with living ships. Admiral Chen looked intrigued despite herself. Symbiotic relationships? Dragon ships require biological pilots, Kara explained. The neural interface is too complex for artificial intelligence, but human brain patterns are surprisingly compatible with dragon biotechnology. With the right preparation, human pilots could control vessels capable of faster-than-light travel without conventional quantum drives. You're talking about humans bonding with living spaceships? I'm talking about humans and dragons working together to build something neither species could accomplish alone, Queen Pyraxis corrected gently. A fleet that can strike anywhere in the galaxy without warning, deliver medical aid to besieged worlds, and give the consortium's victims hope that resistance is possible. The chamber's communication array began to chime with incoming priority signals. Marcus moved to the display, his expression growing grim as he processed the information. Bad news, he announced. Consortium forces are massing at the Kepler Junction. 57 capital ships, including their new Titan-class dreadnoughts. Intelligence suggests they're planning a coordinated strike against every world that's shown signs of rebellion. How long? Queen Pyraxis asked. 3 months. Maybe less. The Dragon Queen was quiet for a long moment, her massive head tilted in thought. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonics of absolute certainty. Then, we have 3 months to remind the galaxy what dragons and humans can accomplish when we refuse to accept defeat. She turned to Admiral Chen. I'll need complete access to Terran genetic databases, plus technical specifications for your most advanced medical equipment. And, in return? I'll give you the cure for every synthetic pathogen the consortium has ever developed, plus the biotechnology to create new treatments faster than they can create new diseases. Queen Pyraxis's eyes blazed with inner fire. But, more than that, I'll give you dragons. Admiral Chen looked confused. Your Majesty? My people have slept too long, believing ourselves the last remnants of a dying species. But, we are not dying, we are transforming. Every human who volunteers to pilot a dragon ship will undergo genetic enhancement. Limited shapeshifting ability, extended lifespan, resistance to radiation and vacuum exposure. You're talking about creating human-dragon hybrids? I'm talking about evolution, Kara interjected, her scales shifting color with excitement. Guided symbiosis between species that were meant to work together. The old stories speak of it, humans who flew between stars on dragon wings, dragons who learned to dream human dreams. Marcus felt something stirring deep in his genetic memory, fragments of stories his grandmother had told him about the early days of human expansion into space. Tales of star riders who could survive in vacuum, of ship singers who could navigate by stellar harmonics, of the partnership between two species that had lasted until some great catastrophe scattered humanity across the galaxy. The diaspora, he breathed.